So I'm going to take a bit of a dive into Callaway's new AI Smoke Driver, sort of a follow-on from the Paradigm series, new model for 2024. What is the difference? So one of the big things that Callaway's shouting about with this model is where they've used even more AI on the face. So what that really means is they've taken a huge sample of swing data and shot data and actual human data, not just computer generated or robot generated data. So essentially they've taken over 50,000 swings, 50,000 samples of real human data to look at how different swing styles impact face contact, but also the dynamics that are required to optimize launch and spin for each model. And they've optimized for the triple diamond, the max and the max draw differently for each of those heads. They've actually gone to the levels where John Rahm went over to Carlsbad and they've designed a face specifically for him. Now I'm sure this is something in the future, what will be possible will be to do that as a recreational golfer ourselves, albeit at probably a pretty high cost, but at some point I'm sure that's going to integrate into their offering for the consumer as well, rather than just their top tier players, but something I think a little window into the future for Callaway. So what that ultimately means is that they're looking at sort of optimum deflection, optimum speed all the way across the face. So utilizing different thicknesses of face, and some what they're calling micro deflections across the face as well. So looking at making sure that the club face is reacting as fast as possible with as much stability as possible, dependent on the swing model. So what they're calling this is they've got their swing code, is the terminology they're looking at, or they're using to determine, based on the type of golfer that each head is designed for, of those 50,000 shots that they've hit with real humans, how do the golfers that suit those heads deliver the club head on average to get the best overall performance off each bit of the face based on contact points, delivery lines for each of those models. So that really is a way of optimizing face tech and trying to get it as suitable across the face depending on average strike point and where your miss is relative to the head series. And as we go into each model, we'll be able to have a look at why that's impacted and what that's going to mean from a performance point of view. Some of the other bits that they've developed the forged carbon in the sole. So what the forged carbon does, it's a very, very hard, stiff material. So it allows them to go very light in the sole, but very, very strong. So where they've had to use metals in the past, this forged carbon has actually done a better job in terms of durability, but also rigidity. So again, keeping the head from deflecting and deforming too much, pushes the energy back into the ball. So lighter and stronger on the sole, and actually all of the patterns of the soles are different. Part of the process means they come out slightly differently visually for every single head. And they've, in the composite and the crown, slightly more flexible because you want the crown of the club just to give a little bit of impact, helps keep a little bit of launch angle on, but again, super, super light in the crown. So allows them to move a little bit more weight around, slightly more optimized in terms of weight positioning for the profile of the head and the forgiveness that they're aiming for. But again, lighter and stiffer in the sole is never a bad point. Some of the other elements, they're calling it sweeter from every spot, actually is the sort of tagline that they're using for the micro deflections on the face. And some of the other points are relatively minor, but as we go through the different heads, we'll look at all those different elements and describe them as we hit shots. I'm just going to do that now. So what I'm doing with these in terms of testing is using my own shaft. So spec-wise, getting it as relevant as possible so that there are as fewer compensations and get the data as true as we can. So with the triple diamond, so what we've got with this head, we've got the weight front and back as we had in the past. So you can switch the heavier weight to the front or the back if you're trying to take spin as low as possible, or move the weight back just to get a little bit more stability. That hasn't changed from Paradigm. The same 14 gram at the front, 2 at the back as standard. Really, this one, the main areas of improvement have been geared around a little bit more stability of spin. The Paradigm is quite a strong flighted head from a spin point of view and could get a little bit knuckly. So the aim of the improvements on this head are a little bit more consistency of spin, a little bit more stability for downrange performance. So same in terms of lack of alignment markings on the crown as Paradigm, but going into that sort of weave, sort of gunmetal weave on the crown rather than blue. So very, very similar look behind the ball at address. A slightly different sound than Paradigm as well. Very, very solid feel off the club face. Little bit of a potentially kind of harder note. The sound with the nature of the composites just changed a little bit there. And for this bit of testing, I've got the weight in the front because I think that's a truer reflection of this head overall. So very, very solid head. I think one of the things that it really feels very stable across the face. You're hitting those few shots there, you don't feel a lot of deflection, which I think that's a slight improvement on Paradigm. We will be doing another video which has a comparison. We're hitting shots with both heads, so that'll be another video to look at if you want to see how the actual data changes between the two models. It's a slightly higher pitch note off the head than the previous model list, but say very, very stable. And I think with those slight changes in a little bit of weight saving in the frame and with the face in particular, what we're not seeing is quite as much of a knuckle-on spin. So technically Callaway are claiming with their data that they've gathered between the different models that there's on average 7.4 yards longer on average head to head from their testing, but 11% tighter from a downrange dispersion side of things, and that across all the heads is the average that they've seen. And certainly consistency of shot, very, very stable. Next I shall move on to the max. Once we've run through each we'll be able to gather the data together and give you a comparison between the three models that we're seeing. So the max versus the previous model has a weight at the front, and that's really a bit of a change to be able to distribute the weight slightly more. So where we didn't have that option previously, the max now has the option to take it a little bit more weight to the front, a little bit lower spin rather than all at the back. So much like with Paradigm, the max model is a little bit deeper front to back, which drags the weight back from the face, gives it a little bit more stability. Visually down by the ball, it's a little bit more elongated as per Paradigm. Very, very similar head shapes overall, but also has that sliding weight at the back, that blue weight at the back as a sliding weight to move it towards the toe or the heel, really to move the center of gravity behind your strike point, just reduces the gearing from a shot shaping point of view. But very, very deep weighted head in order to get as much stability off center as possible. So let's just click these around. So as a driver here, it's really aimed at being a little bit more forgiving versus the triple diamond, and so visually behind the ball, slightly elongated shape. You can see a little bit more there. They have, as with Paradigm previously, the face markings are a little bit brighter, so you can see the loft a bit more. And there's the Callaway V marking on the crown, as per Paradigm, to give you that alignment aid. Doesn't sit particularly closed, so again, actually slightly cleaner head shape, I think, versus Paradigm. So this one, when we go back into the data, you'll see it's a slightly higher loft, so it's going to produce a bit more flight. But this and the max draw, which we'll move on to shortly, are the same loft, so they'll be very, very comparable. Definitely a very solid head. I think one of the elements with this, with the amount of weight at the back, it can, if you have a tendency to open the face in transition, then with how much weight is at the back of this one, that can actually cause it to open up a little bit more. So that's something where potentially having a little bit of a play around with the weights and how much weight sits where, that could help just to mitigate that a little bit. But again, certainly very, very stable off center, not quite as firm a sound and feel as the Triple Diamond, but very, very solid overall, very consistent in terms of we're seeing ball speed. I think as we go into the data, we'll see that. And I'll switch this over to the max draw. So max draw and the max have very similar properties in terms of where they've tried to move the weight back away from the face. In the draw, as you can probably see now with me switching that over here, there isn't that front weight. So we don't have the extra weight at the front, and it's a fixed weight at the back. So previous model, the Paradigm X, which has been comparable to this, was designed to help a little bit of a left to right miss, just to mitigate that slightly. However, it wasn't so much of a draw biased head. It was designed for a little bit more flight. So this one is very much geared towards more draw biased. So visually, it's not a head that sits massively closed. It does have a little bit more of an upright look to it. But this is one they've really worked at trying to lose the right hand miss. So visually, very, very similar, albeit a little bit more upright than the Max. But doesn't have, historically, models that have been heavy draw bias models have sat quite closed. So whereas this one, it really doesn't. So we'll see how this one swings. Okay, wow. So that's actually a really, really big deal. I did not try and make that go left at all, and that really felt like it whipped across in terms of face angle. I'll do a couple more, and then we'll check the data out. So that is really quite impressive. When we see the data, it might look like I'm trying to turn that face over. I'm just swinging. And the first swing there, the head just felt like it just flipped. And I managed to soften it a bit by the last one, but the second one went hard as well. That is a head that, if you have a right hand miss, that is a head that you absolutely must try. If you struggle with a left to right miss, I have never hit a head that's done that before. So it'll be interesting to see from a data point of view where that sits. So if I go into the averages here, so what we can see from a data point of view is club speed all very, very similar. Unsurprisingly for my swing, and where my ball flight comes, the Triple Diamond for me gave me better ball speed. Now it's also a slightly more suitable loft, so some of that needs interpreting for that. But going back to that max draw, the top line there, on that data side of things, what you can see, angle of attack is basically the same with all three, path within a degree and a little bit from the inside. But between the smoke, where possibly managed to hold the face a little bit. That might be me reacting to the club head very slightly. The club face is closing 5.5 degrees with the max draw versus me being able to keep it slightly open with the standard Smoke Max. That's incredible. How they've managed to do that from an internal weighting point of view, that's really very, very impressive. I don't think I've ever hit a driver that has that much draw bias without sitting 7 or 8 degrees closed. And with that, because the face is closing, the launch angle is noticeably lower as a result of that, because of that rotation rate. So launch and spin you're really quite strong off of it, but then when you get someone who tends to open the face, they tend to add loft. So that potentially is a real winner this year. Very, very impressed with that. The standard Smoke Max, so the second layer in the blue there, spin relative to the launch isn't too bad at all, but plenty of flight there. So decent amount of stability, plenty of flight, neutral spin. I think the stability and the forgiveness is going to be the key thing there. And then going down to the Triple Diamond, the Smoke Triple Diamond, it's as per that model, you'd expect a low spin out of that. If it didn't have low spin following the Paradigm, I'd have been amazed. But it's not knuckle spin. So I found with Paradigm that it could really nosedive. Whereas with that, yes, 1900's low, but it's an 11.5 launch. So it's fairly in sync in terms of that. So generally speaking, what they've managed to create are three very, very different heads. I think there really is something for most swing styles in there. I think the ability with the Smoke Max to mitigate some of that deep weighting with the front weight. There will be some variations in back and front weight that we have in order to do that. I think that could be quite interesting once we get products properly in and testing and fitting with. But three very, very different drivers there, and one massive drawbar one. So really looking forward to getting these ones tested with some real world golfers in the bay and seeing how much left to right bass we can lose with that max draw. So taking a bit of a deeper look at the Callaway Paradigm Ai Smoke fairway woods. Now, in terms of the Paradigm fairway woods were very strong, really successful model for them. So how have they improved? How have they worked this forwards? So one of the things that they're majoring on with all of their models this year is the AI technology in the face. So they've taken 50-odd thousand shots worth with human beings rather than just robots to look at strike points, deliveries, look at how, the relevant model for the relevant swing delivery, which part of the face is most important, and how they need it to react. So they're really working on maximizing ball speed, maximizing performance across the face. In principle, making it, in their own words, the most advanced fairway wood face out there. So what does that really mean? It really means that they're looking at miss points and where the general strike point on the face for the player who is most likely to go into each model is, and then optimizing performance, optimizing speed across all points of the face around that model, rather than just based on a neutral robot style delivery. So there's some human elements in there as well, and then the AI integrated into that to give the best performance that they can. One of the elements that's been a big success for them has been the forged carbon sole. Now this isn't the case on the Triple Diamond. This retains a metal sole plate because they want the weight a little bit deeper in this head. But on the Max and the Max Draw, the forged carbon has actually been much more durable than they expected. And what that's done is allows them to keep it very light through the sole here, but it's very, very strong. So in previous models, there's been some damage done to the carbon on the sole. In the Paradigm, it was much more durable than expected. So much so that in Paradigm, there were two metal struts supporting from the front to the back to give it some rigidity. In the Ai Smoke, those are gone. So they've managed to save 24 grams worth of metal in the sole to redistribute the weight around. So that in a head, that's over 10% of the weight of the head just from those two support structures and the structures that they don't now need to incorporate that. So that means more weight at the back for more stability, and they've got a tungsten cartridge in the sole here. So that allows them to keep weight low and forward for low spin and move a load of weight back to give more forgiveness. Those are the two main areas. The Paradigm fairways were very, very solid for them. And so those refinements in principle just mean a little bit better performance across the face, a little bit more stability. So what we're going to do is I'm going to test each of these. I play a Callaway fairway myself, so I'm going to use my own shaft in each of these three heads. We're going to take a look at them. What do they do performance-wise? Who are they going to suit? So I'm going to start with the Triple Diamond. So this one is the low spin of the models. So they've got the weight cartridge at the front, so it's not the same kind of tungsten cartridge that you get on the other heads. However, what we do get from this, we've got heavier sole plate that sends the center of gravity lower. The weight at the front, low and forward means low spin. Very, very similar shape. Lack of markings on the crown here, so much like the driver, we don't have alignment marks on the top, but again, going to that kind of carbon weave effect on the crown too. So very, very clean, sort of traditional lower spin profile from a head shaping point of view. So we'll get a few shots worth, talk through the data a little bit, and then go into the other models. So the last two are pretty solid. The first two are slightly iffy, so data-wise not quite representative, but what we're seeing out of this head is a very, very strong ball flight. They've actually dropped the 3+ head, so they start at the 15-degree loft. Based on the spins that we're seeing, I'm not surprised, because that last one there at 2,500 revs on spin for a 15-degree fairway wood is very, very strong. So loft that down a little bit with their sleeve, their hosel, you can de-loft it a degree, then you're starting to get into very, very low spin numbers, so hence them not needing the low loft. Very solid feeling head. Paradigm Triple Diamond was a very good head too, but it's a very, very solid feeling head, and I think going to be a nice one for the stronger swingers and someone who's really looking to flight that ball down a little bit. I'm going to switch over to the Max. So the Smoke Max, taking over from standard Paradigm, little bit of a bigger footprint on this head. So they've also gone slightly shallower in the face, as with previous model on the Max to the Triple Diamond. Again, looking to get the centre of gravity a little bit lower, looking to get into the bottom of the ball, create a little bit more ball flight. So slightly more forgiving model all round. I think this was a head that the previous model we used quite a bit. And I think one of the things that a lot of players liked was that shallower head profile where it sits nice and neatly behind the ball. And again, it's a very, very clean head shape. Back to having the alignment V on the crown as well as per previous models. Again, last one nice and strongly hit. It picks the ball up pretty well. I think it'll be interesting when we do our comparison with Paradigm where it sits from a flight point of view. But again, quite a strong performance from a spin point of view. There was one I got a little bit necky, so it spun up, but actually that last one, decent contact. Launch-wise, not majorly high, but the spin's quite strong. So I think what we're likely to see with this is we'd like to do quite a few of the 3HL, the 16.5. They're keeping, from an adjustability point of view, the Triple Diamond 3 and 5 wood are certainly adjustable. In the Max and the Max Draw, the 3 and the 3HL are adjustable, and then they move into fixed hosel as per last year. But I can see us doing a reasonable amount of the 3HLs in those based on where that launch is. But very, very solid feeling head all round. So let's move over to the draw. So we saw quite a definite result from the draw and the driver. So this will be something from a fairway wood point of view to see whether they've managed to do something similar here. Draw fairways have historically been things which tended to be not the most attractive heads. However, often functional but not particularly attractive. So from a visual point of view, just setting that down, this actually sits like the driver very, very clean. It doesn't sit with a heavy draw bias on it. And I've got it in the neutral hosel setting here. So considering you can then turn the face in even further, that actually sits very, very clean. You wouldn't necessarily know straight away whether it was the Max or the Max Draw that you've got down the bottom there. So that I think is a plus point straight away. So maybe a little bit more upright than the standard Max, but it's a very similar visual. Okay. So certainly in terms of, from a head point of view, it's harder to get a heavy drawback out of the smaller head as it is with the bigger heads on the drivers. But my miss tendency is a little bit in the heel, so on the TrackMan that can straighten the flight out somewhat. But if we go back into the data comparison between this and the standard smoke, again, what we can see, if actually there are a couple, I'm just going to make sure I haven't got any funky data in here. Yeah, there was one interesting one there. You know, what we can see from the triple diamond and the standard to Smoke Max fairways, my face to path gets a little bit closed, but you know, with the max draw, it's another 50%, another kind of versus the standard smoke. I'm getting 3 degrees more in face angle, face rotation. So that's quite something in itself. But again, without flight-wise, without that really changing too much, launch angle between the smoke and the max, the Max D and the Smoke Max. The Smoke Max launch is just a touch higher. Again, with the face rotation on the draw, that's just pulling the launch angle down a little bit. More often than not, you have to compromise on spin when you're going to the draw models. They tend to lose a little bit of spin efficiency because of having to weight it into the heel. You lose some of the optimum positioning from a flight point of view. But actually spin's only within a couple of hundred revolutions there. So very comparable flight from a spin point of view, but definitely augmented in terms of helping that face rotate round. So again, I think that and the driver model, very, very impressive from that standpoint. Into the triple diamond, you can see with the spin there, launch down, spin down, that's a very strong hitting. So certainly not a club to go to if you're looking for high launch and sort of an easy up and out flight. However, where the Smoke Max sits, for me there at 13 launch and just over 3,000 spin, that's a very, very good ball flight for an up and out performance. So decent bit of launch, strong spin performance, ball speed solid across the face. On initial inspection, I wouldn't necessarily say it's anything exceptional. However, the strength of the flight is very strong. So I think from a distance point of view, purely on ball flight, going to be very strong this year. But again, like the drivers, you've got 3 quite different performances. You've got lower launch, low spin with the triple diamond, upper mid launch with a strong spin in the Smoke Max, and then that draw bars with a fairly strong spin rate out of the Max draw model. So overall, built nicely on the platform from the previous series, taken some bits that have worked very well and worked with them, developed them, which I think is a nice trait rather than just a massive kind of overhaul for something that didn't really need it. I think there's some very, very strong performing clubs there, and we're looking forward to getting those in the fitting bay. Paradym AI Smoke Hybrids. Callaway with the hybrids traditionally have been very strong performing in terms of launch and spin. They've really been quite a powerful hybrid. And the Paradyms, the model last year, were no different at all. Quite compact heads, very strong hitting, and kind of bullet-like in terms of flight. So what's changed? Again, we've got the AI mapping on the face, the huge amount of testing they've done with golfers of different types and abilities to look at strike points, maximize ball speed and forgiveness across the face by getting the maximum face flexion on all parts. But again, looking at actual swings and how they deliver the club head to optimize CG position, where each bit of the face reacts, how it reacts, to try and get the best performance of launch and spin everywhere across the face. They've also got, like the Fairways, the tungsten cartridge in the bottom of the face there. That's something that, tungsten cartridge, low and far forward, that's really about, again, low spin. So looking at that, as you see from the data shortly, I don't believe these are going to be massively spinny heads, because that's just something Callaway have always done, but we shall see. They have gone to a slightly rounder head shape, or slightly bigger head shape versus Paradym. How visible that is, we shall see, but there's a little bit more size of head to look at, which I don't think is a bad thing. The Paradyms were quite small, so that's something that gives you a little bit more head to look at. And really, they've measured on forgiveness and that face tech elements that they've added in with the AI. Materially, they're not wildly different heads from I don't think we're going to see from the standard model a wildly different spin profile, but it's an adaptation, it's the development from the previous model. What they have done this year is they have added in an HL model. So there's a standard and an HL, and the HL, the lofts are exactly the same. So in the model I'm going to be testing the 21 degree. So same lofts between them, but really it's designed for a little more launch and a little bit more spin. What will happen, we shall now see. So these, I don't play a hybrid, so I can't put my shaft into either, but these have exactly the same shafts in. So we'll test them like for like. Get a look at the data and compare from there. So they sit in, we'll start with the standard smoke model. They sit in that kind of mid-range in terms of slightly more wood-like shape of head. They've tended to always have that slightly bigger profile, but they've historically done the more iron-like series as well. But in the smoke series, they're both very similar head shapes. Going back to more of the ex-hot matte grey effect on the crown, rather than that mirrored effect that they had in Paradigm. So last one was a very, very solid hit. A couple a little low on the face. I don't think ball speed was affected much, but the spin kicked up as a result. Quite a solid feeling head. It's not too harsh in terms of sound. Slightly more kind of muted note than previous models. Definitely suits this model a slightly more iron-like delivery, a little bit more of a squeeze. I think if you go to pick it too much, and this is just the nature of the head shape, we'll see a bit more the more golfers we get in the bay as we test them out. But I think if you tend to pick it a little bit more, you may get what feels like a slightly thin contact. So I think this head suits a player that gets the club head down into the ball a little bit more, rather than someone who picks it off the surface. That certainly, like on that last swing, was where I got my best result. I treated it a little bit more iron-like, got down into the back of the ball a bit more, and that produced a much, much more solid contact. If I switch over to the HL, so the HL is a little bit deeper front to back, so moving the weight back a little bit, trying to get that launch angle and that spin up a little bit. Outside of that, actually, one thing it does have, it looks like a very, very flat square face, so it doesn't have a lot of curvature to it. So that's certainly quite noticeable when you set it down as a dress. Very, very straight face and leading edge. Yeah, and that very definitely kicks the ball flight up more. Certainly as a head style, whereas with the standard model, felt like you had to get the head down to the bottom of the ball. This one felt like you could hit it much more like a wood. Certainly shallower, pick it off, gets that ball flight up. So that's where a little bit of a lower center of gravity gets into the ball a little bit easier and then kicks that ball flight up. So, I mean, certainly, you know, that head in particular, very, very consistent from a spin point of view. I'm going to just, one of the ones that I thinned horribly with the first series, I'm just going to take that out because that really won't be representative. But you know, what we can see between those two heads, you know, launch angle wise, there's a 2.5 degree variable on launch angle. So to get that much more elevation, I'm just going to add one data point in, or potentially two, but you know, height and then land angle initially. So height, land angle, you know, the Smoke HL lands, it's got 3 degrees, just over 3 degrees more angle of descent, so steeper angle of descent. So that's certainly a help, but certainly, you know, doing the job that it's designed to. and then from a height point of view, picked up 13 feet of height. So for something which is an identical loft, that's actually quite a notable uplift in terms of flight. What it doesn't do massively is take spin up that much. So between the two heads, it's got 2.5 degrees more launch, but actually no more spin. Now, there was one other shot that I caught a little lower on the face with the first one. If I, for want of a better phrase, kind of sugarcoat, if I take the cleanest hit, then, okay, launch angle slightly more different, but the spin is as good as identical. So where the claim is of higher spin, certainly for me, that's not what I'm seeing, but I am seeing a noticeable uplift in launch angle. So like the Fairways, like the driver, there are two really quite distinct models. There's one, if you're a little bit more of a trapper of the ball, the standard Smoke model is certainly a better head, a little bit more compact, but that promotes that little bit of a flatter, more forwards ball flight. But if you're looking for the ball to get airborne a little bit quicker, then the HL is great for that. However, I think we're likely to see there are going to be higher spinning heads available on the market. But if you're looking for higher launch but keeping a bit of a strength of shot, then the Smoke HL looks like a very, very good head. So look forward to testing those out with people in the bay, and I hope that information has been really useful.